Okay, we're going to talk about the shape tool and the custom shape tool, which will also make us talk about the foreground and background colors, which are these two colors here. And since we're talking about foreground and background colors, we'll talk about the paint bucket tool and the eyedropper and how the paint bucket tool is a little different than the shape tool. So let's first start with the shape tool. I have a blank document here, no other layers, and it's an 8.5 by 11 landscape. So you can set up your document that way. And let's create let's create an arrow, a custom shape that's an arrow. And let's start with just a shape tool, which we'll just do a rectangle. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is about 2/3 of the way down in your tool panel on the left, there's what looks like a square. It's your rectangle tool, and if you click and hold on that rectangle tool, you'll see there's a bunch of other tools underneath there. There's a rounded rectangle, ellipsis tool, a custom shape tool, which we'll use in a little bit, but let's just stick with the rectangle tool for now. And you can see underneath our menus, our application bar at the top, that we have the rectangle tool selected, and we have all the tools that were underneath that layer. So if you click and hold, all these tools actually are up here as well. So you can see we have a rounded square tool, ellipsis tool, polygon tool, line tool, custom tool. So if you're in this tool, the same things are there. Just to make it easier and to make it so you can click on it whatever way you want to get to it, doesn't matter. It actually does the same thing. So just know that's what the tools are. And then we also have a couple other things, style and color. We're most concerned with color right now. And you can see this is a kind of pink fuchsia color, and the reason it's that color because you can see my foreground is pink. So it's going to pick up whenever you select a shape tool, it's going to pick up whatever your foreground color is. So green is my background color, and in your foreground and background colors, there's a couple ways to change those. If you're selected on the tool, you can actually click on this pink color and get the color picker, or you can select on this pink color down here and get the color picker. So it does essentially the same thing. You can also, with this little arrow, you can flip your foreground and background color, and you can tell as soon as I flip it, it changes this color. So this color is picking up my foreground color, and since I swapped it with my background color, it now picks up that green. So if I swap it back again, it'll pick up that fuchsia color again. Now, your standard foreground background color are black and white. And if we wanted to change this to black and white, there's a little shortcut for your foreground and background color. You click on this guy, and you can see it changes back to black and white. So now we can shift this to white or black with our switch tool. And you can see that affects what color our tool is. So let's just say we want a black square for now, and I'll show you how to change it once we draw it out if it's not actually the color you want. So we're in our shape tool. We're going to click and drag, and you can see as I'm dragging I get a shape of what the square is going to look like, what the actual shape is going to look like. So the more I drag to the right and down, the bigger it's going to be. It's going to be more of a rectangle. If I want it square, I could drag a little less. So I'm going to drag it out here, go off the page on both sides. You can see now I have this nice black bar. You'll notice in my layers panel I have this black kind of shape, and I have this second rectangle which is actually the shape. This is called a vector shape. So Photoshop just remembers it's this color and it's this shape. So if you were to delete this, the whole background will turn black, and I'll show you that in a minute just in case you run into that error. Okay, now I'm going to move back to my move tool, and I'm selected on this layer so I can move this box up and down, left and right. I could transform it. I could go to edit, transform, and scale it down if I wanted to. But I could also change the color. So if I change the color down here in my foreground color, that only works when I actually draw out the shape. If I've already drawn out the shape and I have the shape, I have to click on the layers panel in the black area here and double click there, and then I will get the color picker. And as soon as I actually pick a color, you can see that my square will update in real time. So I can see what a blue square looks like compared to a yellow square. And you can see that it's not affecting my foreground background color, because that's very important to notice. After I've drawn the shape, The foreground background color has nothing to do with it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to a nice yellow, and let's say, okay, that's what I want. Now let's go back and draw another square, and let's actually make it a square. So with all our other tools, like our erase tool, you can what's called constraining the proportions. You can do the same thing with your shape tool. So my shape tool selected, and now this gets confusing because it remembered I changed this color to yellow, so it's not pulling the color from my foreground color, it's pulling the color here. So I'm just going to change this back to black, and you can see it changed this color because it doesn't know I want to draw a new shape. It thinks I'm talking about this shape. So let me actually draw another shape, and this time I'm going to hold the shift key down. You can see as soon as I hold the shift key down, it constrains my proportion, so it doesn't actually squish it. So I'm going to draw a perfect square, and that's going to be perfect right there. And now I'm going to change this to yellow and this one to red. Perfect. And with my move tool, I can move these around, kind of put them up out of the way, select them. So what happens to a lot of people is they actually delete this shape, the actual shape. So let's say you meant to delete this whole yellow square, you don't want it anymore. And to do that, you would click on the main color and you would click layer delete. You could go that way, or you could actually go click on the layer and click the trash can, and it'll pop up a box that says, do you want to delete? And this one says, do you want to delete vector mask? And a lot of people think they want to delete, so it's just asking them, are you sure you want to delete? And that's not actually what it's asking. It's asking if you want to delete this little square next to it, and what that's doing is remembering the shape. So basically what this is saying is, do you want to delete the shape but leave the yellow? And if you do that, you'll see what happens. It turns yellow because it's not remembering that that's the shape. It just thinks it's a big layer of yellow. So I'm going to undo that. So you can see this shape is selected because these little corners are on this side, this actual square. So if I actually click anywhere else and just click back on the layer, you can see that that little square is not selected unless I actually click on that square. You can see it's selected by those little corners, bolded corners, or however you want to say that. So if I just click on the layer name, you can see those little corners aren't selected, and if I hit delete now, it'll say, are you sure you want to delete the whole shape layer too? And it's saying this whole layer, so the square and the yellow. I'm going to say yes, because I don't want that. Also, a side note, if I undo that, I'm going to Control Z. Say if you made a mistake, you wanted to delete this whole layer, and you click delete, and you clicked OK, and you have this whole layer of yellow. If you just click delete one more time, because you're already selected on that layer, and then it'll say, do you want to delete shape 2? You click yes, now it's gone. So essentially, you can do the same thing in 2 steps if you forget that. So just know that. Okay, let's draw a custom shape. Pretty similar to drawing a rectangle. We're going to go to our shape tool. I'm going to click and hold in the shape menu on the left, in your toolbar on the left, and go down to custom shape. And you can see that changed up here. Now I'm selected on my custom shape tool, and you can see my current shape is this arrow number 9, and it's going to be red. So I'm going to drop down the arrow, and let's say we want to do a check mark. So as soon as I click my check mark, you can see this shape has changed to a check mark. I can also change to a star, an envelope. There's a whole bunch of other tools in here, or other shapes in here if you want inside this tool. Leaves and moons and stars and whatever else. But let's say I want the check mark, and I can see it's selected because it's there. And if I click in the middle and drag, you can see it skews it left and right, or up and down, unless I constrain the proportions, and I constrain proportions by holding the shift key down. So if I want it to be that exact shape, I hold the shift key down, and I'm going to make it that big. Now notice half of our check marks hanging off, so I don't have to undo this and redraw it. Remember, it's a layer now, so I can move it with my move tool just like I can anything else. So I'm going to change this color to make it yellow, and I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to go to my move tool, and move my yellow check mark up and move my red box down. I'm click on the red box and move it down so it kind of looks like the check marks is sitting on this red box line. So I kind of like that. That looks good. I just want to mention one other thing in selecting your foreground and background colors, since we talked about that this time, is we have this paint bucket tool. And if we click and hold, we have a paint bucket and gradient tool. Your gradient tool may be selected in your tools panel almost exactly halfway down. I just want to talk about the paint bucket tool, which hides underneath the gradient tool. So if we have our paint bucket selected, and it's going to pick our foreground color. So if I choose a new layer, so I'm going to go to the very top here and click on my layers panel, and then I'm going to add a new layer, which is down here. The shortcut's down here, but I'm also going to go to layer, new layer, and it's going to pop up the new layer menu, and I'm going to say layer 1 is fine now. Normally I would label that a different label, but for our purposes it's just fine. So you can see I'm selected on that new layer, and when I click, it's going to fill that layer with black. Okay, now if I want to fill that layer with a different color, I can just double click on this and fill it with a different color. And it's actually filling that layer. So you can see the difference. This red has a little line and triangle underneath it, which actually means you can change it. You can go back and double click and change it to a different color. What you're doing with the paint bucket tool is you're actually filling each pixel with the paint that you've chosen. So you can't actually go back and change this without choosing your foreground color. Okay. Now I wanted to show you one other thing, which is the eyedropper tool. And the eyedropper tool lives right underneath your crop tool. So 4 or 5 tools down in your tools panel is this little eyedropper tool. And what this is really used for is like in an image, actually getting that exact color. So in our example, it won't make too much sense other than you'll see what it does. So I'm going to turn off this layer and watch our foreground and background colors as I select with my eyedropper tool. So I've selected my eyedropper tool. You can see my eyedropper is now my icon. So I'm going to click on this yellow, and you can see my foreground color has changed to yellow. If I click on red, my foreground changes to red. So this is basically sampling whatever color I choose and I click on, it'll sample that color. So how I would use this is like on an image, I would say, okay, I want to use this color, and then I would go to my paint bucket tool and paint that in. So I'm going to change this layer so I can view it, and then I would paint that layer in. So the eyedropper tool is a way of selecting that area that you want. Now the eyedropper tool also lives in the color picker. So anytime you get the color picker, you can choose your color just like we have been doing all day. But if you hover over your composition or your picture or whatever else, you notice that changes to an eyedropper. And so the eyedropper is kind of hidden, but it actually lives in the color picker as well, which makes it really quick and easy to grab that color from your image. So just remember, it actually lives in the panel if you're going to use your foreground and background color, but it also lives in the color picker if whenever you're in the color picker, you move it off to the side so you can see your composition, and you can click in anywhere on there and it'll just keep updating until you get what you want, and then you click OK, and that has changed it. So that the eyedropper tool, your custom shape tool, and your foreground and background color, kind of a trifecta of tools and areas that we use in Photoshop.